What's going on, kids? I apologize for yesterday. Yesterday was a whole deal. And Scotty wouldn't let me in the studio. I don't blame him. The guy's got a family. No, but it wasn't just Scotty. It was too much. It would have been really unruly on air, as sick as I was. You probably hear it. I'm still a little. It's whatever. It's whatever. I'm back today. I'm not going to miss today. Not going to do it. Not going to miss today. So you might hear me sneeze, a little coughing here and there. It's all good. We're good to go. Had to come back. Man, and I am so into what we're getting into today. Starting with these races, and by the way, Chicago Bears, they won the game of the year, and we're only a third or maybe a halfway through the season. Game of the year against the Cincinnati Bengals on the road. They won. They're now 5-3. The division's right there. Game of the year. If you have NFL Network, go check to see. If you like football, go check to see when they're doing the replay. NFL Network does a replay of all the games throughout the week at some point on their network. If you have it and you want to see some of the greatest football you will see, some of the most exciting football you will ever see, check out the Bears at Cincinnati from last week. Bears win. Bears win. All right. Got that out of my system. There are votes. There are elections. There are all sorts of things on the ballot today in different states. I mean, it is super exciting. Some has bigger implications than others. Some have bigger implications than others. Some are a kind of referendum on Trump's policies in purplish areas. And some are just necessary. Some just have to happen. We have to have some of these. What we have to have, and we will get in California, Proposition 50. The people in California are going to vote on Prop 50 whether to redraw the maps, right? The district maps for the House representatives, the district maps in California. They want a mid-census redistricting to combat the mid-census redistricting in Texas. They have to combat them. And if this passes, it's looking to get 5 or 6 flipped. And that will just about balance out what's going to happen in Texas. That would be a huge thing. Now, we will see what happens with the Voting Rights Act in Section 2. We talked about majority-minority districts, and if they go away, the huge shift. But it seems like the decision on that will get kicked down the road because it looks like the justices don't want any part of this for this midterm. So we may not see the results of Section 2 possibly being overturned till the 2028 elections. That being said, in terms of just the redistricting and the redistricting war, the gerrymandering war that has now flared up across this country, Prop 50, California is doing its part. They're doing their part to balance out what's happening in Texas. So that is huge. Definitely 5 seats there will go to blue. Definitely 5 extra blue seats if that goes through. We've got a governor race in New Jersey. Now, this one's interesting. This one's interesting because New Jersey is basically seen as a blue state for the most part. And Republican nominees for president haven't done well in New Jersey. Not really great until Trump's last run, until Trump's last campaign. I'll get there. Jack Ciattarelli is versus Democrat Mikey Sherrill. Okay, so Mikey Sherrill has been distancing herself from the current governor, Phil Murphy, Democratic governor, and he is kind of getting the blame for New Jersey's staggering cost of living right now. He's getting the blame. So she's trying to distance herself. Now, Sherrill has the slight edge, but it's getting close. It's getting very close. Like I said, Trump, he did better than most Republican nominees for president do in New Jersey. He only lost New Jersey by 6 percentage points. For a Republican, that's very good. But, if this is a referendum on Republicanism and Trumpism on a whole, if that's what this becomes, don't forget, Trump pulled the billions of dollars in funding from the blue states. Remember Blue Project? We talked about it. We talked about it at length about the billions of dollars in funding getting pulled from blue states. Blue states that are standing up to this guy. And one of those projects that got the kibosh because of this funding being pulled was New York and New Jersey. The Gateway Tunnel project was put on hold. The funding for it clawed back. New Jerseyans didn't like that. Not at all. They understood. They understood the economic significance of that project, the good it would have done in New Jersey. And Trump now weaponizing the budget and playing politics and pulling the funding for their project. They see it for what it is. Hopefully they will see it for what it is. We'll know this vote here, whoever wins the governorship in New Jersey, this will be a clear sign. Do they get it? Because if the Republican nominee wins, the answer will be no. They don't fully get it. They can't see the forest through the trees. And if they're blaming the Democrats in that state for their economic woes, and that overrides everything, well, then they have spoken. And the Trump policies aren't affecting them as negatively, they feel, as the Democrats' economic policies in their state. That will be decisive. We will see clearly. But that's not what is expected to happen. Jackie Sherrill, she's a Navy pilot turned Congresswoman. She right now she represents New Jersey's 11th district in Congress, so she's going for the governorship. All right, and the whole thing about her is it's an anti-Trump campaign, a lot like what they called Letitia James's campaign for AG in New York. Anti-Trump, that's what Jackie Sherrill's campaign is being dubbed as, being, labeled as. It's an anti-Trump campaign. I mean, Ciattarelli, he acknowledged that pulling the funding for that program may be detrimental, but he also parsed words and did gymnastics to defend Trump's actions there. He's party line. So we'll see if that party line messaging is effective. I expect Sherrill to win this race. Pennsylvania. They have, this one isn't in my mind quite as consequential, not as important, and I'll tell you why. In Pennsylvania, 3 Democratic Supreme Court justices, they are going to ask for another 10 years. It's an extension, right? It's a chance for the people of Pennsylvania to say, we like the job you're doing, you get 10 more years. Okay, so you're saying, Brett, these are Supreme Court justices in Pennsylvania, a purple state where there's already been election conspiracy, right? And the courts there are so important to pushing back and stiff-arming election conspiracy and keeping things lawful and truthful according to evidence. They're one of the stopgaps to stealing an election. You say, Brett, that's really important. It is really important. The people we're talking about is Christine Donahue, Kevin Doherty, and David Wecht, all 3 Democrats. Now, it is important, for sure. It's important to abortion rights because that's a state-by-state thing, right? You get red judges in there, things might change in your state quickly in terms of abortion rights. It's important for redistricting or lack thereof. And like I said, election law. But here's the rub. If one of those judges should fail to get the extension, if the people should say you're doing a bad job, you're out, they have to leave by January. Now, here's the thing. That's uniform across all states. But what's not uniform is how they select a replacement. And in Pennsylvania, the governor reserves the right to appoint anybody they want to that position should the people kick the current justice out. And in that state, it's Josh Shapiro. And I trust Josh Shapiro to make the right decision. So even if one of these 3 Democratic Supreme Court justices should not get the vote of the people, should not get the trust of the people, the mandate, I expect Josh Shapiro will make a decision that we don't have to worry too much about. And that's why I feel like that's not quite as influential. Plus, it's not expected any one of these will be voted out. It's not expected. Could happen. There's an interesting one for a couple reasons. Texas's 18th congressional district. Texas's 18th. That has been vacated when Sylvester Turner died in March. Now, that's a blue district, and there are, amazingly, 16 candidates for this seat. But 3 have emerged. The leading candidate is Christian Menefee. He's expected to lead and possibly win. If he was to be seriously challenged by anybody, it would be by two people, Jelanda Jones and Isaiah Martin. Martin is polling a little bit farther behind, but he's an exciting pick, they're saying, in the area. But it's pretty much down to Menifee and Jones. And it's looking like it might be Menifee. All Democrats. All Democrats. But here's what's interesting about that. We are currently in a shutdown. Should, let's say, Menifee wins, heads off to Congress, is he going to get the same reception Miss Adelita Grijalva got? He'll get an office with a computer and no password. You'll be welcome down the hill, but we're not going to swear you in. We're in pro forma, Mike Johnson will say, even though he himself swore in 2 Republican representatives during a previous pro forma. But now he's saying we're in pro forma. We can't swear in Grijalva. And he's going to say the same thing about Menifee if he should win. Can't swear you in. We're in a shutdown. We're in a shutdown. And here's the thing. You already know Grijalva will be the 218th signature on the discharge petition. She said she'd sign it. Can't wait. Can't wait for the opportunity to sign it. Just has to get sworn in. And then that bag of worms gets opened up all over Mike Johnson's lap. But as soon as Menifee, if he should be the winner, wins, the breakdown in the House right now will be 219 to 215 with Grijalva and Menifee. That means they can lose 1 vote in the House to pass anything. They can only lose 1 vote. 1. That is huge. That is monumental. Now you know why California is doing what it's doing, right? You know why Texas is doing what it's doing. It's razor thin in the House. Razor thin. There's another governor race. Switching gears, there is another governor race. Oh, and by the way, yeah, this one's interesting for a whole nother reason. Now, in Virginia, not all states are like this. Some states just vote for a governor, and the lieutenant governor comes along with that person, and then the governor chooses an AG. That's some states, not Virginia. Virginia, they vote for all 3. They do a governor's race, a lieutenant governor's race, and an attorney general's race. They do a race for all 3. Now, for governor, that's less exciting. That one's less exciting. That one, they think they know what's going to happen. Democrat Abigail Spanberger is expected to defeat Republican Winsome Earl Sears. Okay, now you guys remember Glenn Youngkin? He was the former Republican governor of that state. That's expected to switch. Spanberger is expected to win. But as far as the AG race, and the AG race might affect the lieutenant governor race. It looks like the governor's race might be wrapped up. Shouldn't be affected. But possibly the lieutenant governor race and the AG race. There it gets a little more interesting. Jay Jones is running for AG of Virginia, Democrat. And there would be really no drama here except Jay Jones had texts of his exposed. That's right, texts. Violent texts about a Virginia House member. And among other things, in this text, this House member that he spoke about was one Gilbert. Gilbert, okay, is his name. And what he put in there is, if there's 3 people in a room and you have 2 bullets, and those 3 people are Gilbert, Hitler, and Pol Pot, I shoot Gilbert twice. That's what he put in the text. Am I going to sit here and defend that? Of course I'm not. Am I going to say you ripped it off from The Office? Of course I am. Of course I am, because that's a direct rip-off of The Office. Come original, Jay. But no, obviously he shouldn't be doing that. And so they're going to see. This is a little test. Will this kind of violent rhetoric and exposed texts from the left affect how the left votes in this matter anyway? In the lieutenant governor's race and the AG race, the Democratic nominees in both those cases were expected to win. Now, maybe not. And if Jay Jones should fall, how much will that affect the lieutenant governor? Virginia being, a state that had a Republican governor, but has been voting blue for the most part, this could be telling. There's some other votes, but the one I kind of avoided because I wanted to give it a little bit more deference is the New York race. and Mamdani, Amamdani. I messed it up anyway. The Mamdani race, the New York mayoral race. Let's get into it next.
It's time for a quick break, then we break some more. You're listening to Brett Breaks Things. You're back with Brett Breaks Things, because democracy doesn't defend itself.
All right, the Mamdani race. It's starting to gain a little traction, right? Starting to gain a little traction, especially with our dear leader talking about it. We'll get to his statements. But, yeah, you got the put Cuomo in the mix as an independent, third-party candidate. It's an interesting race. And Mamdani is an interesting candidate. And, a lot of the people who, study and pay close attention to the Democratic Party are saying that this is really a turning point for the party. And it's creating a split, a division, a rift in the party. And you've heard it. And the rift is over the far progressive philosophy of the Mamdani campaign versus the centrist, more conservative wing of the Democrat Party, who are really worried about alienating some of the more centrist Democrat voters or independents, right? Left-leaning independents. The centrist and conservative Democrats in the party and the people who, the big money that lean that way, they really are afraid. They're afraid of the right's messaging attached to Mamdani and its efficacy. Could it take hold? Could it infect the minds of, independent voters or possible centrist Republicans that we have a shot at grabbing because of the Trump policies, right? They don't want to do anything to waste the opportunity that Trump may be presenting. Less than ever, Republicans are identifying as MAGA. Less than ever. When I first started working with Randy and MAGA really, really took hold, right around the middle of Trump's first term, it was something like 36 or 37% of Republicans identified as MAGA Republicans. That's down. That's way down to 30% or so. He's losing people. He's losing actual chunks, effective chunks of people. And the more centered Democrats don't want to waste the opportunity. They don't want to alienate these voters that may be floating in that middle area, breaking off from Trump, looking to attach themselves to something. And that something may be a Democratic vote if messaged to properly. And a lot of Democrats are saying this Mamdani's going to screw it up. He's going to mess it up. And the Republicans are going to be able to attack him. And the messaging surrounding him will scare voters. They'll scare them with this guy. I mean, he claims himself to be a democratic socialist. Okay? He vows to expand housing, food access, health care, freeze rent costs, free city bus rides, public care for school children or for young children not in school, city-owned grocery stores, raising the minimum wage. Real evil stuff. Real evil stuff that the Republicans will morph and distort and call communist and scare people with. And he would be the city's first Muslim mayor. You think they can't find a way to attack that? Come on. That's a softball for them. That's light work for the Republicans to attack a Muslim elected official. Are you kidding? That's obligatory. That's part of what being a Republican is. Yeah. I mean, don't forget also, adding this to the mix, New York has the largest Jewish population outside of Israel in the world. And Mamdani has said things that the Jewish population has found objectionable. So his opponent, one of his opponents, Andrew Cuomo, has seized on that. Pro-Israel and Jewish portions of the voting, of voters have kind of wandered over to Cuomo's side. It's an anti-Mamdani stance, really. But some money has gone over to Cuomo's side. Pro-Israel, Jewish contingencies have gone over to Cuomo's side. He's seizing on it. Why not? He needs all the help he can get. Mamdani is expected to get 46% of the vote. Cuomo somewhere around 30-something. And there's another person running, Curtis Silwa, who was the founder of, the Angels? The Guardian Angels. He was the founder of the Guardian Angels. That group that would go around in the berets with, melee weapons and police the streets themselves. That was him. Cuomo, though, if you can call it, a contest, it's Cuomo. Cuomo's his best competition. He's not going to win. And it's going to be interesting to see if Mamdani can somehow get up over 50%. That the messaging on that, the optics on that, every percentage point higher and higher above the expected, a percentage point that he's going to get, anything above it, every point above it, eases it for the Democrats, eases the messaging. The more and more popular Mamdani appears to be, the easier it is to kind of get on board. But if this is a divisive choice, even among Americans, where he gets 46 or God forbid less, it will be more of a warning sign, more of an alarm that the party is being divided by this man. It's going to be interesting to see if he gets up over 50%. That will be interesting. It will be interesting. He's gotten endorsements out of Kathy Hochul and Hakeem Jeffries and some others. Cuomo, on the other hand, he's gotten endorsements out of Trump, and we'll get to some of Trump's statements. We will get to Trump's statements in just a second. But don't forget, Cuomo left in 21. Pardon me, I should have hit the button on that, Scotty. I apologize. Cuomo left in 21. He had controversies, right? You remember that sexual harassment and his mishandling of the COVID-19 pandemic. He made a number of mistakes there. So he's being backed by Trump and, like I said, some pro-Israel and conservative voters. And he is expected to finish second. Now, you want to hear what Trump had to say about Mamdani? Let's hear from Trump on Mamdani. He said a few things about Mamdani a few different times. He said a vote for Republican candidate Curtis Silwa, who looks much better without the beret, is a vote for Mamdani. So first he attacks anybody who's thinking about voting for Silwa, saying don't divide the vote like that. If you don't like Mamdani, you have to vote Cuomo is his point. Whether you personally like Andrew Cuomo or not, you really have no choice. You must vote for him and hope he does a fantastic job. He is capable of it. Mamdani is not. He doubled down. If communist candidate Zoran Mamdani wins the election for mayor of New York City, it is highly unlikely that I will be contributing federal funds other than the very minimum as required to my beloved first home. Because of the fact that, as a communist, this once great city has zero chance of success or even survival. Yes, that was what he said verbatim. That was not me misreading it. Once again, I feel I have to defend myself when his gibberish is truly incoherent. And you're thinking, Brett, did you read that wrong? No, that's what he said. Because of the fact that, as a communist, this once great city has zero chance of success or even survival. That's right. Those words individually make sense, but when put in that order, complete nonsense. The man is failing. His faculties are failing him. Have we not talked about this? He went on 60 Minutes. I'm not a fan of Cuomo one way or the other, but if it's going to be between a bad Democrat and a communist, I'm going to pick the bad Democrat all of the time, to be honest with you. So, now he's threatening New York. You better vote right or it's going to get harder. That little tunnel project, I kiboshed that. I nixed that because your governor has the temerity to speak out against my policy. And your mayors and your officials give me even the slightest bit of pushback on my radicalized immigration policy, so you get punished. And if you make the wrong choice in this election, you're going to get punished even further. Despicable. That is not how the presidency is supposed to be used. I know that's saying it very lightly, but I mean, that's just so unacceptable. It's just so unacceptable. Cuomo, you may find Cuomo's comments on this interesting. Cuomo heard that Trump called him a bad Democrat, and he responded. He said, Trump called me a bad Democrat? No, I'm a good Democrat. I'm a proud Democrat. Because when I lead, I protect our values and our people. He went on. ICE, and this is interesting, listen to this. This is the guy that Trump is backing. This is how afraid Trump is of Zoran Mamdani. Listen to this. ICE and the National Guard coming into New York City under my watch? Never. It didn't happen when I was governor, and it won't happen when I'm the next mayor of New York City. I've seen this Trump movie before. This isn't a job for a rookie, calling Mamdani a rookie. They had debates. Mamdani wiped the floor with him. But the fact that he's coming out and saying, no ICE, no National Guard, and Trump still wants him over Mamdani. Mamdani's got Trump scared.
We'll be back to break it all down. You're listening to Brett Breaks Things. Breaking news, breaking rules, breaking through. Back to Brett Breaks Things.
Okay. Now, this one I'm excited to get into. I'm excited because this is one of the largest Supreme Court decisions coming up. Of all the decisions we've talked about, and we've talked about a lot of Supreme Court decisions during this term that are going to be made, totally reshaping, reforming, and a total blueprint on executive power for years to come. A lot of these. I already mentioned the Voting Rights Act in Section 2. Majority-minority districts. Are they constitutional or not? And I told you I'm not as optimistic on that one. I'm not as optimistic. Kavanaugh saying, well, look, some of these majority-minority districts were created on decisions that should sunset. As the racial climate of America changes, the laws surrounding districts based on racial biases should also change. We should reevaluate them. We should reevaluate them. And I told you that, some of the opinions that are being bantied about in that case that I hope really take hold is not getting rid of the Section 2, but reworking the criteria, itself to grant a majority-minority district. Don't get rid of them. Don't hand them 12 or 16, however many districts it might be, straight from blue to red by overturning the whole thing. Hopefully they can say, look, the climate is changing. The racial climate is changing a little bit in this country, so why don't we change the criteria with which we judge it? I hope that's the idea that takes hold in the justice's mind as they decide on that. Where they're going to decide in January on Lisa Cook and whether he can remove one of the Fed governors. They have allowed him to remove the heads of other agencies. Will they allow that? Case after case after case. Lots of cases before this term. But this one is huge. It is huge, and it may have a surprising outcome, especially for those of you who think this Supreme Court completely weaponized. Period. End of story. The Heritage Foundation, the Federalist Society, they got their picks in there. Trump pushed them through. They lied to Congress, got their nominations, got their confirmations, and then are doing whatever Trump wants them to do, period. And there is some evidence that you may be right. No doubt. There is some evidence you may be right. Sorry about that. But on this one, reserve your judgment. Reserve your judgment. What we're talking about here is the IEEPA, specifically Trump's invoking of the IEEPA and imposing these tariffs willy-nilly, here, there, right now. You this much, you that much, you that much. You want to bend the knee, you want to come make a deal, it's less for you. You have some kind of economic or domestic policy that we don't agree with, it's double, triple, quadruple, whatever. You want to get in a war with us, you want to act tough on a global stage, 100%, 50%, 75%, 104%, whatever. right? You've seen the relationship between Canada. You've seen the relationship between China. You've seen the relationship now between Brazil. Ruined for now because of the IEEPA and Trump's use of it. Some experts are saying this is a toss-up. I think it might be even better than a toss-up. As I do some digging into each justice and how they may rule on this, I feel like it may even be better than a toss-up. I may be naive. I may be overly optimistic on this. I don't know. But it's not just going to be a decision on the use of the IEEPA alone. There are broader implications. And Trump has said that this is one of the most important in the history of the country, this case. One of the most important in the history of the country. He said, quote, if a president was not able to quickly and nimbly use the power of tariffs, we would be defenseless, leading perhaps even to the ruination of our nation. He has been pulling that trick since his first campaign. If you don't vote for me, America is done for. We're going to be ruined. It's all going to come to an end. It's all going to come crashing down. Chaos is your only other option than me. And he uses that all the way to the end of the tracks, hyperbole every single time. Everything is just, it's either me or absolute ruination every single time. And you'd think that his voting base would kind of see through that if they cared about what he said, if they actually cared about, the details of what he says and the meaning of what he says and not just go with the philosophy of Trumpism. If they cared, you'd think that would peel him off, but no. No, he does it every time. He's still doing it. Now he's doing it in terms of this case. He even flirted with going and sitting in on the oral arguments, which no president has ever done, but then decided against it at the last second. So he didn't go. He didn't go and sit in. But, he doesn't need to sit there because his presence is always felt by these justices, man. He's always hovering. He's always looming. They've allowed him to withhold funds appropriated by Congress. They allowed him to kick transgender troops out of the military. Done. Whatever he wants to do in terms of pursuing his immigration policies, we're all good here. Like I said, firing the heads of agencies again and again and again, culminating in the Lisa Cook firing. And can he do that? They've let him fire everybody else. Deploying national troops to California, no problem there. So again, if you're thinking that they're just going to do what he wants them to do, I don't blame you. Their track record sucks. No doubt. They've done what they were put there to do, for the most part, up to this point. But will they here? Jack Goldsmith, a Harvard law professor, said that because the legal issues were so closely contested in the tariff matter, some justices could weigh broader implications across the set of presidential cases, concerned about either handing Mr. Trump too much power or handing him too many defeats. At the end of this term, we'll see wins and losses for Trump on presidential power. This is the case I think is the closest, so I don't know which way it will cut. That is a depressing commentary on the job of the Supreme Court right now, with the overarching specter of Trump infecting every decision they make. The fact that they can't just look at the veracity of the case. The case is learning resources versus Trump. There's about 6 companies involved in this lawsuit, that's brought. To bring the cases to the Supreme Court, you have to have damages, right? Somebody has to have been hurt, and they have to prove how they have been hurt. And so 6 companies, VOS and Learning Resources among them. They're the bigger ones. It's Learning Resources versus Trump. That's what this case is, just so we're clear. So it's a depressing statement on the Supreme Court that they can't just look at the case, Learning Resources versus Trump, and figure out, can Trump use the IEEPA in this manner? And has Trump's usage of this damaged the plaintiffs? They can't just look at that. They have to look at as Jack Goldsmith said, the broader implications. They have to be worried about handing this tyrant too much power or invoking the wrath of this tyrant by handing him too many losses. That's really, really depressing. Even more depressing is that I would have my doubts that most of them give a crap about handing him too much power. While Jack Goldsmith is saying, hey, they'll have to weigh these things. Will they? Will some of them? Will that be something some of them have to consider even? Am I worried about giving Trump too much power? Do you think Kavanaugh's worried about giving Trump too much power? Is Mr. Goldsmith being a little bit too optimistic like I am that they would even weigh that? So, he imposed the IEPA. He imposed tariffs on more than 100 trading partners. VO Selections is the other major company attached to this lawsuit. Some state officials are attached to the lawsuit. The wording of the IEEPA is very important here. It's the Emergency Economic Powers Act, by the way. International Emergency Economic Powers Act, the IEEPA. That's what this is. The statute gives the president certain tools to deal with any unusual and extraordinary threats to national security, foreign policy, or economy of the United States. That includes the power to regulate imports. Regulate imports. There it is. The real crux of this decision for these judges will be, one, can he impose these tariffs on and off, higher or lower, to everybody right now under regulation? Can those be explained and filed under regulation? Is that regulation? See the ambiguous wording? It's a problem. And the other thing they have to decide is there actually an emergency? Did Trump constitutionally and lawfully evoke this emergency act? Is there actually an emergency? That's the other really important crux of this case. That's the other really important point. Okay? Now, the president's lawyers say the language gives him broad authority to impose tariffs when he believes an emergency exists. But the law does not mention, now that's what the president's lawyers are saying. Here's what the small businesses lawyers are saying. The law does not mention the words tariff, taxes, or duties. If the word regulate meant tax, the president could tax everything, from autos to zoos to everything. Could tax whatever he wanted, as much as he wanted. They're saying regulate does not mean tariff or duty. Doesn't mean it. The administration insists that the consequences for the country are too significant for the courts to resist Mr. Trump. They say that rolling back the tariffs and potentially refunding money already collected could lead to economic ruin akin to the Great Depression, an interruption of trade negotiations, and diplomatic embarrassment. That's what they're saying. I think now this is what Scott Bessent is saying. Of course, Scott Bessent weighs in. This is his purview, being the Treasury Secretary. Scott Bessent says, I think the more deals we've done, the more money coming in, it gets harder and harder for SCOTUS to rule against us. So, some lawyers are saying emergency powers are meant to be used during emergencies. Some lawyers are saying the court, it's going to be real wary about second-guessing the president's interpretation of these emergency powers. A lot of lawyers are split here. They're split. But you haven't heard yet the part that I'm a little optimistic about. I wouldn't be so optimistic about them being split on this. Some of them are split on what's going to happen with Section 2, and I don't believe them. I'm hopeful, but I don't necessarily prescribe to that. But this one, I'm going to get into real quick when we come back to put a bow on this. I'm going to let you know how I feel some of these justices may rule based on what they've said in the past and based on their philosophies as a judge and based on, some of the things they said during their nominations and some of the things they have said during the Biden administration. When collected and aggregated and taken together, I think you actually get a fairly clear idea on how some of these people may vote on this. And I'm telling you, it's not all doom and gloom.
Breaking politics, breaking narratives, breaking news. But first, we need a coffee break. Now back to Brett Breaks Things, smashing spin, silencing the noise, and keeping it all facts. No fluff.
Okay. So now that most of my audience is gathered around the campfire, I will apologize again for missing yesterday. And as you can, if you watch the show, you can see I'm a little sick still, but I'm getting over it. I feel much better. I am going to go late today. I'm definitely going to go long today. I don't know how much longer I can go with scheduling, but I am going to go long because there's more stuff I want to get to, especially with the shutdown. But I don't want to shortchange what I'm talking about now. So I am going to go long today. And I do apologize for yesterday. And there's going to be another day this week that I'm going to have to take due to other job obligations and scheduling, but that won't continue. We will go back to 5 days a week regularly once I get through the hockey portion of the year. I do another job with a local minor league hockey team, play-by-play PA, do camera work, hire people for the broadcast of their live broadcast, and just so for a few days over this month and a couple going forward, I have to be there. I have an obligation to them. There's nothing I can do to avoid it. So I will be going long on the days I am here this week, and then soon, I promise you, right back to 5 days a week with long overtimes, and we're going to move closer and closer to 2-hour sessions every single day. That's my vow to you. And we've had some donations come in. Thank you so much. Thank you so much for any donations. Just amazing out of you. This really is a team. Scotty does what he has to do, and he does it amazingly. I come in here and I try to do justice to the work that Scotty's done and do justice to your support for this show, and I really hope you find value. And the value you find in the show, I feel like, is quintessential in what I'm going to tell you now. Because this is the type, what I'm going to tell you now is what maybe, MSNBC or CNN or left-leaning outfits won't focus on because maybe they want you scared. Maybe they want you riled up. Maybe they want you thinking in terms of doom and gloom to activate you. And what I'm going to tell you now, obviously, right-wing outlets aren't going to focus on. There can't be any cracks in the Trumpian armor coming out of right-wing media. So that, right here is really where we find our lane. And I sunk my teeth into this. This was out of the Washington Post that detailed some of this and brought some of this together for me so I can bring it to you. In terms of this case, how will the justices rule? How will they rule? Now, we got to peel off two of these people, two of these justices. We got to peel two of them off. That's it. Just two. You know how the three liberal judges will vote. We need a 5-4 decision. Okay? So Sotomayor, Ketanji Brown Jackson, Kagan, we know how they're going to go. It's the other six. Can we peel two off? Gorsuch. I say maybe on Gorsuch. Gorsuch is one of the ones that I'm more hopeful on. And the reason I think that he can be won over is because he, like Coney Barrett, they are fiercely originalists. He has a libertarian streak in him, but they're originalists. And the question that would be before him, possibly in his own mind, when he considers this is, would the founders have recognized a system that hands the power of the tariff solely and unitarily to the president? Is that type of unitary power over tariffs something the founding fathers would have approved of? I think that's what he will weigh in his own mind, right, when he thinks about it. In the past, he has vigorously argued for the separation of powers. He has even argued that the Supreme Court should maintain the separation of powers even when one of those branches tries to give their power to the president. They should stop that. They should be a bulwark from that. So he has vigorously argued in the past about the separation of powers, and he's an originalist. And does he think the founding fathers would want Donald Trump to have that kind of unitary power over tariffs? Does he think that the founding fathers would want Congress completely stepped over in this manner? I think he might say no. I think he might once again argue for the separation of powers, for the duty of Congress and their role in imposing tariffs. I really feel that way. I do. Then there's Chief Justice John Roberts. Chief Justice John Roberts. This one I'm also pretty hopeful on, to be honest with you. Call me crazy. Call me crazy. I'm hopeful on this. One, the major questions doctrine. Okay, it says that Congress has to be clear when it delegates sweeping power to the executive branch. And the major questions doctrine was argued by him over ambiguous language used by a president. He argued this against Biden's $430 billion student loan cancellation. Remember, Biden had talked about this, ran on it, and when it came down to it, Supreme Court said no. You don't have the actual power to do this. Your powers cannot be interpreted as such. The language being ambiguous, he suggested the major questions doctrine applied to Biden's policy. And I think he will do the same here. I think he will point to the ambiguous language under regulate and say that the ambiguous language does not grant him sweeping powers like tariff control in this manner. Just like it didn't give Biden the right to cancel $430 of student loan, $430 billion of student loan. It's the exact same argument. Also, I think he may have a problem with the pretext of an emergency. He has, in the past, frowned upon some of Trump's pretexts. You know, Trump is using the pretext of an economic emergency because of our trade deficit and the imminent threat on the U.S. economy. Yeah, I think he might push back. I think he might push back on the pretext of emergency here. I think he might. I think it might be twofold out of him. Maybe. Along with the Chief Justice, I think that Coney Barrett will go right along with him because she went right along with him on the $430 billion student loan cancellation. And she even said that that was her favorite opinion. That was her favorite opinion. And I want to give you a little excerpt about what she said then. Watch how directly it applies to his use of the IEEPA. Listen to this. And when I give you this, I want you to think of this in terms of the IEEPA and Trump's use of it. Listen. She said, consider a parent who hires a babysitter to watch her young children over the weekend. As she walks out the door, the parent hands the babysitter her credit card and says, make sure the kids have fun. Emboldened, the babysitter takes the kid on a road trip to an amusement park, where they spend 2 days on roller coasters and 1 night in a hotel. Was the babysitter's trip consistent with the parent's instructions? Maybe in a literal sense, because the instruction was open-ended. But was the trip consistent with a reasonable understanding of the parent's instructions? Highly doubtful. And there you have it. You really can directly apply that to Trump's use of the word regulate and the powers afforded to him under the IEEPA. Congress gave Trump the powers to regulate, sanction, freeze assets. That's how the IEEPA has actually been used. Other presidents have used it. None of them have ever used it to impose tariffs. Like I said, they freeze assets. They impose sanctions, like we have on Cuba. That's what this is usually for. In Coney Barrett's own words, these tariffs, 100 tariffs on other nations, some high, some low, at the drop of a dime, that is not the reasonable interpretation of the power Congress has afforded him. Not reasonable. So I think she's a maybe too. Kavanaugh? No. I'm just going to say no. I think Kavanaugh will be one of those justices that looks at the broader implications. I think Kavanaugh will be swayed by the more practical implications of striking the tariffs down. I think Kavanaugh will be swayed by the argument of the chaos that might follow The Supreme Court saying, no, he can't do these tariffs. Not like this. Also, I think Kavanaugh will look more closely at the case at hand. And he may not find for the plaintiffs. It may not be a big look at the IEEPA and the president's use of it. It may be more a look at, for Kavanaugh, who has said in the past that we should defer to the president on foreign policy and emergency matters. He said that in the past. He'll say it again here. He'll say that he is afforded, a broader range of discretion in these matters, Kavanaugh will. And he may not find that the plaintiffs sufficiently proved damages according to the president's use of this foreign policy emergency. They may not prove that the president's foreign policy, which should not be, tampered with too much, should not be affected by the Supreme Court too much. They might say that you failed to prove that his foreign policy damaged you. He may do that. So either way, Kavanaugh's a no. But some of these others, they may come along. They may come along. I'm hopeful. I'm hopeful. Clarence Thomas, no. That dude's bought and paid for. You're asking me about Clarence? I know you. I hear you thinking about it. What about Clarence? That's even more ridiculous a notion than Kavanaugh. Don't even think about Clarence Thomas doing anything the president doesn't approve of. The dude has been bought and sold. The stories have been out. He refuses to recuse himself. He's been given gifts, went on trips. The evidence is out there of his, he's been bought and sold. I don't know, there's no other way to say it. He's been completely compromised. He has been bought and sold. He is a defunct justice. He is a symbol of everything that is wrong with our nomination process right now and the tribal nature with which our government works. He embodies everything that's wrong with the Supreme Court right now. So no, don't even think about him. Don't even think about it. Up to this point, the American businesses have paid about $90 billion to the tariffs, paid to the Treasury, $90 billion. Some things to know about this case. One, if it should get shut down, if it should get struck down, and it's going to play out, right? This is going to play out over months. The amount that might have to be refunded, the compensation amount, it's going to grow. It's going to get bigger. It's going to get more muddied as time goes on because these tariffs are still being paid as the case plays out. It would not be a quick or easy process for businesses to get the refunds. Not at all. This could take years to get the refunds. We talked about that already. It's also unclear what businesses would even qualify for these refunds. And the justices, they're going to have to take time to figure all this out should they strike it down. This will all be on them. They're going to have to figure this out. This will all take a ton of time. And there's something else you need to know about these tariffs. Not all of Trump's tariffs have been under the IEEPA. Some of them have been under Section 232. And under Section 232, he can target specific industry sectors. And he has. Now, the thing about these are, you can't turn them on and off like Trump's IEEPA tariffs. This emergency. He just tariff for you, right now, tariff for you, whatever I feel like. Section 232 doesn't work like that. There has to be an investigation by the Commerce Department. And then after the investigation shows that there is reason to impose tariffs, they go forward. Trump's already done that. He imposed tariffs on autos, auto parts, steel, aluminum, copper, and furniture, among others, under Section 232. None of those would go away should the Supreme Court strike down his IEEPA tariffs. Those Section 232 tariffs, those will remain. And by the way, no matter what they rule, he promised those Section 232 tariffs are going to continue. They're going to continue. He's not going to stop that. Not going to stop it. There's some other things as we wrap up this topic that I want to be fair about. One, inflation has been a little bit higher, but not as high as people thought it would be in the face of these tariffs. That's number one. I want to be real fair about this. It rose to about 3%. It rose to about 3%, rose about 1% since the tariffs have been implemented. A lot said it was going to be more, But the tariffs themselves have not netted what Besant and others promised us it would net. They said by the end of the year, we would have somewhere between $500 billion and $1 trillion in tariff profits. Right now, they made $34 billion in October. They're on track for about $400 billion over the year. That is well short of what Besant said they would make. As far as the effective tariff percentage and the raise in prices, the effective tariff rate that companies have to pay, it was theorized it'd be around 17%. It's actually only been 12%. And there have been ways it's been mitigated. Because China's got such high tariffs, people are looking to, countries like Vietnam, Mexico, Turkey that face lower tariffs to create their goods and import to get their goods from. They're just going to less expensive trade partners. They're shopping around, which is probably a good thing. And if these get struck down, they'll still get a better rate. So that's a good thing. Hopefully our relationship with China will repair if they strike these down, but we'll see. And the other thing that has softened the blow of these tariffs is that since the pandemic, companies have been making record profits. And they've raised their prices so much since the pandemic that they're afraid that if they raise their prices anymore, you simply won't be able to afford it. No customer. So they're taking the brunt themselves. On average, these companies are eating around 75% of the tariff costs and passing 25% on to you. That's not that bad. We're going to overtime. Come right back with me. Thanks.
It's time for a quick break, then we break some more. You're listening to Brett Breaks Things. Brett breaks things because someone has to.
All right, overtime. Because I want to talk a little bit about the shutdown. And I want to talk a little bit about Snap so my audience knows exactly where we stand, because we're up to the minute on this, because it was breaking a little bit as we were getting prepared for the show. Now, yesterday, the Trump administration said we're not releasing all of the emergency SNAP funding. We're only releasing part of it. As you know, a judge said, it was Judge John J. McConnell Jr. of the U.S. District Court for Rhode Island. He gave Trump a choice: either release all the funding by Monday or at least partial funding by Wednesday, and found that the government had a legal obligation to sustain the program any way they see possible. So what he meant is, all of it now, or if you can't get all of it released now, logistically, it at least has to be partially in place before Wednesday. So what the government interpreted that as is we're just going to release partial, period. That's it. The Trump administration said we're not going to release all of the emergency funds. The emergency funds for SNAP was $5.5 billion. Now, even economists will tell you that it's about $9 billion a month to fund SNAP totally, and the $5.5 billion, if released in totality, would still only partially cover the SNAP recipients. So Trump said, okay, great. We're just going to partially release it. We'll release $4.6 billion of the $5.5. Just, to be vindictive, I don't know. I mean, we're still talking about a partial funding. Whether he released all 5.5 or the 4.65 that he's saying, that his administration is saying that they will make available, it's still only a partial funding. And people are pissed. Amy Klobuchar said it's not enough to do the bare minimum. The administration should stop playing politics with hunger and use all available resources to ensure Americans can put food on the table. The White House did not respond to a request for comment, rather. Didn't respond. No comment out of the White House. Scott Bessent, however, said there's a process that has to be followed. So we got to figure out what the process is. President Trump wants to make sure that people get their food benefits. No, he doesn't. How do I know that he doesn't? Because he came out and said that he doesn't. He said he doesn't. Even though the administration said we're going to release $4.65 billion of this funding, President Trump on today, said no, nothing. The benefits in the program known as SNAP will be given only when the radical left Democrats open the government, which they can easily do and not before. So something's got to give. His administration says, okay, here's $4.65 billion of the emergency funding. We'll release that. We'll adhere to the judge's order and release that. Trump came right out behind him. We're not releasing any of it. None of it will be released. So I guess it'll be up to Russ Vought to make the decision. Oh, God. That doesn't bode well for SNAP recipients. Doesn't bode well. But there is a fight on it. Because that same judge now has a new lawsuit he has to consider. A new lawsuit. Because in response to the partial funding, in response to just partially being funded, just partially dipping into that emergency fund, local leaders and nonprofits have filed a new lawsuit right there to Judge John J. McConnell Jr. He's going to have to decide on somehow rewording his decision to make the Trump administration release the funds in full. So as soon as he did partial, this coalition filed a lawsuit. We want it all. And we want this judge to make it very clear to the Trump administration they need to go and get all of this money, all 5.5 right this second. So there is a lawsuit. And the judge will have to double down on his decision with much more clear verbiage. So the Trump administration cannot weasel around and somehow deny what should be just released without question. And by the way, I reminded you of this last week, but Trump during the first shutdown in his first administration, there was no debate over this. There was no debate. When SNAP funding was in danger, Trump just immediately greenlit the release of the emergency funds. All of them. Go. So now he wants to play games. Now he wants to be tribal and play politics and retribution and vindictiveness. Now he wants to do that. Even when his administration is trying to play ball with this judge's decision, Trump just says no funding. So we'll see what happens with that. We'll see what the judge's order is. I have a feeling I know what the judge will order. The judge will order them to release it all right now, is what I think that judge will order. The USDA has said in documents that it will face procedural difficulties that could stop payments from reaching households in a timely manner and in the correct, and it'll be a challenge to get the reduced amounts correct. They said it expects to be weeks, if not months, to distribute this emergency funding. Weeks, if not months. So, if you are taking advantage of SNAP, you really don't know when you're going to get your funding, and it's going to be partial when you do get it. It's going to be partial. USDA has dug its heels in. They said, we warned you. We warned you. It's going to be a problem. Now, SNAP, again, is about $100 billion in funding every year. How about $100 billion of fund SNAP? And each recipient, on average, the average per participant of SNAP is about $187.20. So it will be less than that. And it will be weeks, if not months, before the funding kicks in, before the recipients actually see their partial funding. That is a big problem. That is a big problem. That is a problem for Democrats and Republicans alike. It's a problem for Democrats and Republicans alike. So they're coming together. Another big problem, by the way, is this Thanksgiving travel season. Oh, that's a big problem. It's a big, big, big problem. And so the U.S. Travel Association and 500 tourist organizations, oh my goodness, still a little sick, guys, I'm sorry. We're almost there. 500 tourist organizations, along with American Hotel and Lodging Association, Cruise Line International Association, the American Gaming Association, tourism boards, they are all urging lawmakers to just pass the clean resolution and open this up, because what we're going to see on Thanksgiving is going to be disastrous, not only for the people flying on Thanksgiving, but disastrous for the travel industry. They are expecting around $4 billion in losses just during the end of the year tourism season, because people don't want to deal with it. The people that do want to deal with it are going to see record delays, cancellations, record. But they're saying not just that, but so many people are just saying, bleep it. I'm not dealing with this. I'm not dealing with it. I'm not dealing with the airports. I know that TSA agents and air traffic controllers are not being paid. Safety will be down. Efficiency will be down. Everything across the board will be a problem. Big problem. And I don't love that many associations are out here saying just sign the clean resolution, because those associations have employees and people that depend on them that will be in big trouble when the ACA subsidies expire. It's a bit of a short-sighted view out of these major associations, but I don't blame them. That being said, I don't blame them. I know why they're doing it. They're trying to avoid billions of dollars in loss, which will also affect the people that work for them and depend on them. Damned if you do, damned if you don't. But they're asking for a clean resolution. So it's a lot of mounting pressure. A lot of mounting pressure on Republicans and Democrats alike. You know, Obama, I wanted to play this. Obama gave an address at a rally, and I want you to hear what Obama had to say as we talk about the problems Americans are facing in this shutdown. This was pretty interesting. I want to play this.
And here's the thing. It's not as if we didn't see some of this coming. I will admit it's worse than even I expected, but I did warn y'all. I did. You can run the tape. And by the way, he warned you too, because he said what he was going to do.
Yes, he did. Yes, he did. Yes, he did. That's at a rally, by the way, for Spanberger in Virginia. I told you she's probably going to win that race. But that's at a rally for her. He also said a couple other things. I'm going to play this real quick because he's right. He nailed it.
And all the nonsense we see on the news every day, the over-the-top rhetoric, the fabricated conspiracies, the weird videos of a U.S. president with a crown on his head flying a fighter jet and dumping poop on protesting citizens. All of that is designed to distract you from the fact that your situation has not gotten better.
Period. Everything, the wars, the immigration, all the headlines. Meanwhile, you struggle. You, Democrats, Independents, Republicans, you struggle. He's right. Would I vote for him if we use the same squirrely little loopholes that they plan on using to get Trump in a third term? Would I vote for him? I would. I absolutely would. I would love the chance to vote for Obama again. Oh, my God. God, that would be amazing. That would be amazing. Put him as the vice president on, a Newsom ticket, right? And then have Newsom step down. And then have Newsom step down and make Obama president. I'm down. I'm here for it. No, but he's absolutely right. The headlines are to distract that you're suffering. Everybody's suffering. And the Democrats and the Republicans, they know it. As far as the House goes, when you look to the House leadership, there is none. You've got a sycophantic foot soldier who's willing to lie as much as needed about absolutely anything in Mike Johnson. And when faced with all these things that coming out of the administration, all these problems that the American people are facing, he never knows nothing about nothing. There was a mashup. It was a hilarious mashup. The House is closed. Mike Johnson closed it. And when it comes time to answer for the things that are going on while the House is out of session, here's Mike Johnson. Time and time again, here's Mike Johnson.
Listen, we're shut down. I don't know anything about that. I didn't see the interview. You have to ask the president about that. I don't know any of the details of that yet. I just heard about that literally. I was walking in. I don't know the details about that. I've just read it. I didn't talk with him about that. I don't know the latest developments. That's first I've heard of that. I don't know anything about it. I don't know what you're talking about with the children. I haven't seen that, so I'm not going to comment on it.
Yeah, he doesn't know anything about anything. He doesn't know anything about anything. So the House is in session, but the pressure is about to start flipping back to him. It's about to start flipping back to him. They're going to have to reopen the House. They're going to have to. Because the House's version of the CR only funds through November. That's going to be moot soon. They're going to have to get something longer. Going to have to. So if they pass something in the Senate, it's going to have to include language that's longer. They're going to have to amend it and pass it again in the House. Okay? That's one thing. Obviously, you've got the two Democrats that want to be sworn in, Menifee and Grijalva. They can't get sworn in, but if he's forced to open the House, they will be sworn in, won't they? And while he's on vacation, not knowing anything about anything, Dems and Republicans, more centrist Dems and Republicans in the House are getting together. And their negotiations are taking place that is yielding results. And a bipartisan proposal has been unveiled. You see, a handful of Democrats are openly questioning the Democratic leadership's stance on absolutely not voting for a clean resolution to open the government. Nothing. No spending bills, no clean resolution, none of it. And some Democrats are starting to say maybe that's not the right path, or at least the right verbiage. Maybe we should be negotiating a little bit more. And in turn, a lot of Republicans in the House are saying, why are we so steadfast against ACA extensions? Maybe we should be talking about ACA subsidies and extending them in terms of the spending resolution. Why are we being so steadfastly against any negotiations? Some centrists are coming together. Specifically, Don Bacon, Republican out of Nebraska, Tom Suozzi, Democrat out of New York, Jeff Hurd, Republican out of Colorado, and Josh Getheimer, Democrat out of New Jersey. They unveiled a proposal on the ACA. They unveiled a proposal to enhance the premium tax credits for 2 years. Extend the subsidies for 2 years. And they're proposing a few different, reforms to try to come together on this. One, to phase out the cap, the income cap. And the income cap for people making between $200,000 and $400,000. They want to phase out that cap, make more eligible. There's other reforms that they want to introduce on this. They want the marketplaces to actively confirm who has died and who hasn't. The Republicans want to lessen the chance for fraud. There's language in here specifically to lessen the chance for fraud, specifically on recipients that haven't or had died yet. Confirm it. Keep it tight. No more fraud. They want to create a whole new standard for cracking down on fraud and transparency. So there's language in there to reform it. This is in the House. We'll see what happens with this. But obviously we can't vote on anything if it's not open. We can't vote on this if it's not open. Well, now the Democrats and Republicans are starting to talk in the Senate. They're starting to talk in the Senate. Now, a lot of Democrats don't want to talk with Thune, and they don't trust Trump. Some Democrats are saying we have to negotiate something. Something has to happen. John Thune has floated that something could happen within the week. Within the week. They're floating deals, short-term funding deals, some that might include language on the ACA, possibly, but less than that. Less than that. What's realistically being floated, and this is why some Democrats are wary. What's being realistically floated is a promise to vote on the ACA subsidies in the Senate if the Democrats reopen the government. Where have we heard this promise before? This is a replay. This is a replay of Trump's first term shutdown. Trump wanted funding for his border wall in the resolution, and the Democrats wanted a guarantee for the Dreamers, language to guarantee the Dreamers would be safe. When push came to shove, the resolution that got passed, the funding that got passed, did not include funding for the wall and did not include language for the Dreamers. Instead, the Democrats, they took the Republicans' word for, we'll vote on the Dreamers after the funding. And they did 3 different times. All 3 were shut down. And no guarantees for the Dreamers were put into law. Nothing. Empty promises. It was an empty promise out of Mitch McConnell and the Republicans that they would, entertain some kind of guarantee the Dreamers would stay here. And they flat went back on their promise. They reneged. They flat went back. They did not uphold their end of the bargain. And some Democrats have real long memories. And some Democrats are saying, don't take the bait. Don't bite. It's not a real carrot. It's not real. If we sign this resolution, we have absolutely no guarantees that they will even vote on the subsidies, let alone pass it. And have Trump not come behind and kibosh it altogether. We have no guarantees. And they're right. And they're right. However, should the Senate come to some kind of agreement on a new resolution, something that is funded through into next year, something past November, the original Republicans version, which is through November, something past that. It has to be something past that. Then the the House will have to come back later this week. They have to come back to session, and they have to vote on it. And that opens a whole can of worms for Mr. I don't know nothing about nothing. And the pressure will flip from the Senate right back squarely on Johnson's shoulders once again. And he will take center stage. And we will watch him try to wiggle out of that. He will have to swear in Grijalva. He'll have to swear in Menifee. The discharge petition will go through. And they'll have to vote on a new resolution. And when you've got a growing contingency of House members coming together, bipartisan, coming together and saying, we all really actually want to end to this. And we actually want to listen to the needs of our constituents. And we want to do something about their health care. And we don't really want to play the games you're playing, you and your dear leader anymore, Mike Johnson. We want to get something done on both fronts. We want to get this thing funded, and we want to get people insurance. And we want to do it in the House now. That's a lot of pressure on Mike. And we'll know how this plays out by the end of the week. We'll see if John Thune is right, if they hammer something out by the end of this week. And then Johnson will have to come back. And Mr. Know Nothing About Nothing is going to have to know something real quick. Coming back tomorrow. Thanks for staying a little overtime with me.